I'm Mike.
And I'm Morgan.
And this is EV in the Sticks.
Okay, today we are starting out a new video series on becoming an electric vehicle owner. If you're interested in electric vehicles, you need to see all these that we're coming out with. This is the first one, but there's going to be more. You got to watch them. You got to like and subscribe. If you have any interest in going EV, this is information
This
you're
is
going
for
to need.
you. So when we were first researching electric vehicles, we'd start reading an article and we'd run across terms that we didn't understand. So, EVSE, what's an EVSE? I got to stop and Google it before I could continue on. And as we were doing that, it was taking a long time to research. So we decided, we'll go talk to the salesman at the dealer. And the salesman at the dealers didn't have very many answers for us either.
And that's kind of a fluid situation. As we went and bought ours, there weren't very many EVs on the lots, and we went in there, and when you first start looking, they are in their immediate sales mode, and they're going to be like, "Yeah, we can get you in one of this. Let's get your credit check right now and buy it." But eventually, they learn that's not how EV purchasers are going to work. We got to go in. We're going to ask some questions, and by the time I actually bought mine, about 2 years after him, by the time I bought mine, they had given up. And when you walk in there and you say, I'm interested in this EV, they just flat out said, look, you EV buyers, you guys done so much. You guys all know more about them than us. I can't answer any of your questions. But that's fluid, and they are learning now as they get more.
I think a lot of people out in the sticks, as we call it, that could be the mountains. That could be the Great Plains in Nebraska and Kansas. That could be the South. Whatever you consider the sticks in terms of being out there a ways, I think people in the sticks have heard on the news or they've been reading articles that the electric vehicle revolution is coming, and they're sort of holding off. They're like, I don't know about that. Electric vehicles sound new and different, and I'm just not sure that I'm ready to have to charge my car. I don't know what all these terms that electric vehicle owners use. So we thought we would demystify it a little bit so that people know what the terms are and they can understand the jargon when they hear electric vehicle enthusiasts, owners, and even salesmen use.
Yeah, I'm an old school muscle car guy. I was a Mopar fan from the time I was little. My dad was, his dad was, had old V8 Dodge Darts. I had a lot of them over the years. My kids all grew up with these hot rods. I've just loved them things. Got rid of my last muscle car, gave it to my eldest son. He's a Mopar parts guru, so he's going to know how to keep that thing a classic. But in that branch, there was terms and vocabulary that was needed to know what you had in that car. I mean, like a 750 Holley carburetor, 650 Holley carburetor, whatever you're putting together, these terms were important to know what you had and what you were getting and what you were going to need to adjust this system out. Same thing is true in the EV world. The terms are important to understand what you're dealing with. And sometimes when we talk, we use a term that we didn't know, we didn't explain. So this is main function of this episode.
So let's start with the first group of electric vehicle terms, and that would simply be electric vehicle classifications.
Okay, electric vehicle in and of itself is one of the terms we got to cover. EV, it's in our name. EV in the sticks, electric vehicle. There's different types. That's a big umbrella. It covers things. But EV, when we say EV, we're talking about an electric vehicle, which could be any one of the numbers of electric vehicles.
So a couple of classifications of electric vehicles are the PHEV, the BEV, and the hydrogen fuel cell. And then the counterpart to an EV is an ICE car. What's an ICE car?
ICE car. ICE stands for ICE. It's also an acronym like most of the words we use. Internal combustion engine. And that covers everything from a four-cylinder Toyota Corolla to a big diesel semi. If they have an internal combustion engine, they are an ICE vehicle. And we're not really going to talk about how an ICE vehicle runs and describe their parts needed or anything because we're worried about transitioning from those to an EV. So we will use the term ICE vehicles in comparison but we're not going to be telling you how to rebuild your ICE vehicle.
Another kind of vehicle is the hydrogen fuel cell car. Now, this is an electric vehicle. It has a battery, but instead of charging the battery by plugging it in, you fill the vehicle up with hydrogen. And the hydrogen runs across the fuel cell and has a chemical reaction. And that chemical reaction is what provides energy into that battery. And this is sometimes considered an neat, innovative idea because it's more similar to ICE.
Way cool idea. Way cool idea. I love the idea of the hydrogen cell.
But there's a problem. The problem with the hydrogen fuel cell is, when we did our research, we found 2 fueling stations for them, both in California. We don't consider these viable options for people in the sticks, but we know our audience are smart people and know a lot. So if you know something about hydrogen fuel cell cars that we need to cover, comment, like the video, subscribe, and comment. Let us know. We're willing to cover that sort of content.
We're not only willing, we would love to cover that kind of content if you could find anything in the sticks that supports a hydrogen fuel cell.
What are the kinds of vehicles we are going to focus?
The next one is one that it's my personal favorite for living in the sticks. It's a BEV, battery electric vehicle. Now, most times you'll hear me use the term EV, but I'm normally talking about a BEV because that's kind of what I'm going to buy. Now, I don't know if that's what everybody else is going to buy, but that's kind of what fits my life the best. So BEV stands, that means you plug it in, you charge it, you drive it. Instead of you never have to stop at a gas station. There's no gas involved, no fuel. There's no engine. The fuel there's electricity, but you plug it in. Instead of having to pulling off the road, pulling into a gas station and filling up, I get out of my car when I get home, plug it in, and I unplug it and go to work. And it's a full tank every day. I never have fuel issue.
The other kind of vehicle we're going to cover on this channel is a PHEV. And a PHEV stands for a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. This is somewhat similar to the BEV. It's got a battery in the car. You plug it in at night at your home, just like you do the BEV. But you only get about 20 to 50 miles of range, depending on the model. And after that, a gas engine will kick in so that you have extended range that way. This is considered a vehicle that's really good for people who are kind of interested in going electric, but they just aren't sure they can make a BEV work in their lifestyle. And we're going to cover this because we consider it a great in-between step for people. And in fact, we're going to be reviewing a Jeep 4xe in a forthcoming episode, and a Chrysler Pacifica because of a deal we're working out with a local dealership here. So stay tuned for excellent plug-in hybrid electric vehicle content as well.
And it's coming. You got to watch more episodes. You have to subscribe to see these things because you'll be notified when that stuff happens. I highly recommend you subscribe. If you want to see those test drives, they're going to be awesome. We're also going to interview the dealers, and you'll see how much experience they got and knowledge of what they got, which is, I think, a crucial thing about your EV.
And if you have more classifications of electric vehicles, like the video and comment. I want to shift gears. I think we've covered classifications pretty well. And so I want to start with a question to you. You're more mechanically inclined than me. So in your opinion, what is the most important mechanical feature on an electric vehicle?
Actually, what you're talking about here, it's either have the feature or don't have the feature. But you list them in 2 ways. You have what's called a passively cooled battery, and you have an actively cooled battery. And if you have an EV, you're going to fall in one of them 2 categories. And I think it's important to know what you're buying if that's what you're looking for. So when you go see somebody and you're looking at a car that we haven't talked about already, and don't know if it's a passive or active, ask, find out, read the owner's manual.
What's the difference between active cooling and passive cooling?
Okay, now, first thing I'm going to cover is passive, all right? Passive basically means the battery's mounted underneath the car, probably in the frame on what they call the skateboard model. Skateboard, that's a term we need to cover too. The skateboard is basically how the frame of the electric vehicle is set up. The batteries are all through the bottom, so your weight's balanced. We got a low center of gravity and hug the ground evenly. So In a passive cooled, the battery's down there, and the only cooling it gets is the air that you shove underneath it as you're driving. If you're sitting in the Walmart parking lot and it's 110 degrees, there's no cooling on that battery. It's going to be 110 degrees. And if you have a current ICE vehicle and your battery is in there, your battery's only going to last about 5 years because it gets going to sit in that Walmart parking lot and be 110 degrees. And when you're parked in that Walmart parking lot and it's 34 below zero, your battery is going to be 34 below zero. That ages a battery, okay? And so if it's passively cooled, that means it's just like your ICE vehicle battery. It's going to age. Now, everything ages, but it's going to age at the same at a faster rate. Now, if you're in an actively cooled battery, that means your battery is in a case, and it's underneath the vehicle and the skateboard frame that we have in all EVs. Now, your battery is going to get older, but it's never going to see temperature changes. The battery sits in a case that has full of some kind of antifreeze thing that is actually heated. There's a heating element in the front that circulates this fluid, and actually, if it's 34 below zero, it's going to keep your battery warm. If it's 110, it's going to keep your battery cool. It's actively cooled. Now, that means you get something in an actively cooled system you don't get in the passively cooled system. That is called phantom drain. That's another term, phantom drain. You come out and you got 1 bar less of fuel. That's because this battery is going to be kept either hot or cold by its own juice. It's going to run the heating and cooling system for that battery. But your battery is going to last way longer. They don't even know how long they last because they haven't had one go bad yet. Now, there have been factory defects that have gone bad, but they haven't seen one age out all on its own without some kind of destructive force included into that. So we're going to find a lifespan eventually, but right now we don't have one.
You need to realize the first actively cooled battery would be on the Tesla Roadster from '08s, and some of those have required new batteries, but usually for outside trauma or some other force. But you have
a lot of vehicles have the Nissan Leaf. You have vehicles crash, you're going to crack that case.
Yeah, you have vehicles in excess of 250,000 miles that are actively cooled and still haven't hit their limit. Now, I think we've covered active and passively cooled. We covered the skateboard. I think the next set of terms has to do with charging. Everybody's so concerned with charging. And I remember reading about level 1, level 2, and level 3 charging.
Okay, level 1, level 2, level 3 charging. Levels 1 and 2 use a certain plug. There's multiple plugs, all right? When you're in level 1 and level 2, you have 2 basic styles, all right? You have the Tesla plug-in, which you can get an adapter for, and they can get an adapter for the other one. And then you have the J1772. That's a term that sounds like a lot of numbers, but you're going to be dealing with it daily with an EV. The J1772 is what you plug in for level 1 and level 2 charging. And that's pretty much from the Nissan Leaf to the Ford, the new Ford F-150, the Mach-E. They all use J1772's level 1 and level 2 charging.
So let's talk about what those are. So level 1 charging is both the best and worst of charging an EV. It's the best of charging an EV because you can do it anywhere, and I mean anywhere. Any place that has a 120 outlet that's ground faulted, you can plug in your car. Right into the same outlet you plug your cell phone into, your lamp into, you can plug your vehicle into. These things are in homes.
In the garage where you plug in your radio arm saw or your drill or whatever.
Your homes, your garages, hotels. Just about everywhere has 110 outlets readily available, or 120 outlets readily available. But it's the worst of EV charging because it's definitely the slowest. It only charges about 4 hours of range, or 4 miles of range per hour of charge. Just abysmal numbers. The charging that is mostly done at home, especially for people in the sticks who have to travel long miles for, maybe you have an 80-mile commute if you live out there ways. Maybe you have, 50, 60-mile commutes. What you do is you get a outlet installed in your garage, similar to an outlet that you plug in your stove and dryer into.
Or an adapter for your level 1 charger.
And you plug in your level 2 EVSE into that, and it charges at a rate of about 30 miles per hour of charge. And so what that means is,
and that varies on the model. I mean, you got to.
Let's say you commute 80 miles both ways. So you have a 160-mile commute a day, no problem. You make your commute, and then you plug in your car at night like a cell phone, and you're ready to go with a full tank of gas in the morning. So it's really, this is the system that we view as being most beneficial for people who live out in the sticks. But what if I want to go visit Grandma in Fayetteville, Tennessee?
Well, you go 250 miles, the end of your range, and then you park.
So she lives about 850 miles away.
Oh, it can't be done.
I do. Is it going to take me 4 days to get down there?
It definitely can be done. You use a DC fast charger. DC fast chargers are awesome way to travel with your EV. You don't want a level 2 down the road because that takes too long. And DC chargers isn't a day. Well, they do it daily out on the coast. I don't recommend daily. I don't think any manufacturer
recommends. Don't do daily. Level 2 daily is fine.
But a lot of coastline people that aren't in the sticks, dude, that's their only charging option is that you do that. We don't have those options on a daily. But as soon as you leave to go travel somewhere, you got to stop at these DC fast chargers, which there are literally millions in the country. I don't know if it's millions.
Thousands.
Hundreds of thousands, probably. Yeah. They're all over. So you got to stop and plug them in, and there's apps on your phone you got to get, and we'll cover those on a whole nother episode. But it'll let you know where they're at, and most of these cars today are coming out with their own maps for where the next charger's at and stuff like that.
Built right into the navigation.
Built right in. I still recommend these other apps, but we're going to cover that. Like I said, that's a lot of information. We're not going to cover that here. But you got to stop at these fast chargers. And you can charge, I know the longest stop I've ever stopped at a fast charger was 50 minutes, but normally it's 30 minutes or less in my car. I'm going to want to be charging and so you charge that up and then you go again. You go to your range limits and charge it again. And there's so many ways to charge out there on the fast chargers. There's free. I mean, I travel with nothing but free charging, and I'll drive the extra 20 miles to stop by a free charger, where he only stops at convenient locations.
I prefer the convenience to charging. I do pay for
He wants to stop outside of a restaurant, so when he's got to stop traveling, you got to charge for 40 minutes.
And look,
go in and eat lunch.
I've got kids. Ready to go. I've got kids. So if I'm going to stop for 40 minutes, I want to knock out the bathroom breaks, the charge, and the eating all in one stop. And guess what? By the time we finish bathroom breaks and eating, car's about ready to go. So the DC fast chargers are really convenient for long road trips.
Yes, really convenient. And there's 3 different types of plugs. You have the Tesla. They got their own plug. These are all terms that you're going to know. The Tesla outlet plug is one plug. Even though it is a brand of car, it's also a type of plug. And then you have what most of the industry standard is, CCS. And I don't believe anybody's making anything other than Tesla and CCS today. I could be wrong, because there's a third one called the CHAdeMO, which was the standard for everything at one time. And the CHAdeMO, like the Nissan Leaf, it only charges fast charger on the CHAdeMO. And the CHAdeMO is it's a DC fast charger. It's just a different plug-in style. And you can get adapters from CHAdeMO to CCS to Tesla. And you can do all that converted. And people are going to be needing these to keep their variety options open.
So I think we've covered charging in pretty good detail.
One time say, just for the terms, CCS, CHAdeMO, and Tesla. So you get the verbiage down. Okay, we've covered all charging.
Yep. So let's talk about some other fun features of EVs and things that people might hear in their purchasing process. Let's talk about regenerative braking. I think you've got a great story about that.
Regenerative braking is the most awesome thing.
It's the miracle of regenerative braking.
I grew up on ice vehicles. You can tell because I got a white beard. I look kind of like Santa Claus. I have been around. I mean, we rode horses in the day. But what I've never seen happen is my fuel gauge go up while I was driving. For instance, I drove up the Rockies, just like in an ice vehicle. When you're going up that hill, it's a big hill in the Rockies, and you got to put more fuel in to get up to the top. You're going to spend more miles per gallon if you're using an ice vehicle, and you're going to use more electricity going up. That's just part of the nature of doing extra work. Now, in Colorado, there's so many chargers, it makes no difference. But as far as availability of power, it's out there. And we stopped at the top, at the summit, and stayed in a hotel. Now, when we parked into that hotel, we had 75% charge. We got up in the morning, we ate our breakfast, we didn't charge because we were going to just keep going and charge when we needed to. Just like you would an ICE vehicle. You don't make a stop when you're only down a quarter tank. But as we drove, we went going downhill in the Rockies all day for about 300 miles. And as we were going down this hill, we have something called regenerative braking. Even though you got your foot on the gas pedal and your cruise control set, there's a generator in there that if the pull is harder than what you need for energy, it generates power. And it generates like 24 kilowatts sometimes. It goes up. And so you're going downhill and it's charging itself. And when we got to the bottom, we had 95% charge in our battery, and we didn't stop and fuel that whole day. We stopped at the hotel, went to the pool, we did some partying there at the end, but it was all about, we celebrated because we didn't have to fuel. The fuel gauge went up from 3/4
to 300 miles.
And the only reason it had 95% is regenerative braking only charges you to that point. At that point, it shuts off.
In order to protect the battery.
Yeah, it's to protect the battery so you don't overcharge it and stuff. It shuts off at 95%. That's all I could put in it. And it was like full charge. And I'm parking at the hotel, and I'm like, we never stopped for fuel today. We did have to stop for bathroom breaks and stuff like that, but we're not getting fuel. It's just got a full tank.
So here's another term that I think you'll hear in your purchasing process of many EVs. What is a frunk?
Oh, the frunk. The frunk is pretty awesome. I don't have one. I have one on order, but I don't have one. What I currently have it's EV that have frunk, but most of them are coming out with frunks today. And the next one I'm getting is definitely having a frunk. And but the frunk is a storage compartment up where the engine used to be in a nice car. And it is so awesome because I got to carry a bag with me everywhere I go for work. It's got my hard hat and work stuff, and it's always in the way. I got to throw the back seat of my car. My car's full of work junk. Now, I can throw that bag now in my frunk, and ain't nobody going to be seeing it. I can throw my grandkids in the back. I ain't got to find a place to put it in the bed of my truck, get it wet in the rain and whatnot. Now I have a frunk. I can put my stuff in there and it'll not be in the way ever again. I'm loving this idea. Not to mention for tailgates, the cooler and stuff in there. It's like awesome.
So Morgan and I both have electric F-150s on reservation right now.
Oh man, those are going to be awesome.
Ford is using a term for that called the Mega Power Frunk.
Push a button.
You push a button, it's got a power lift gate on it, and that frunk is so large it can hold 2 golf bags. It's 400 liters of capacity.
400 pounds of payload in the frunk.
Another really cool feature that the other Ford electric vehicle, the Mustang Mach-E, has, and that the F-150 will also have, is their frunk has a drain plug in it to use it as a cooler. That solves tailgating right there. You got your drinks right there under your Mega Power frunk. It's going to be so awesome to take that thing tailgating and stuff when we catch in some games and things. So the frunk is just one of those really cool features in an EV. And if you're interested in something like that, make sure you like this video and subscribe, but also make sure you're looking at electric vehicles that have that. The Fords have it, the Teslas have it, but to present, the Chevrolets don't. So be mindful of whether or not the frunk is important to you. And go ahead and like and subscribe, because we'll tell you, as we're reviewing all the different EVs, we'll tell you which ones have a frunk.
And mind you heard it first. Chevrolet is fixing to come out with some new fantastic stuff. They're going to be frunks, but it's going to be a whole different thing when they come out with them.
They're doing a reveal on the electric Silverado in January. We will cover it. We'll probably go live for it. But I just want to say, I'm really curious to see how that vehicle stacks up to the electric F-150.
I think it's going to stack up pretty good. Electric vehicles, I think, all stack up pretty good.
Do you get the sense that Chevrolet might have held back on their truck because they just wanted to beat the stats on whatever came out first?
I don't.
Or is there no grand conspiracy? Is this? It could just be.
I don't think it's a conspiracy. I think they had to deal with some bad PR. They have some bad PR with the Bolt, and even though I'm going to go into this, this is not what this episode's about, but there's these Bolt fires they've had. You've probably heard about them. It's really overhyped. If you look up the stats, the real information, that all the Chevy Bolts got recalled to get new batteries, and you're getting a new battery. I'm getting a brand new battery, and we're getting brand new warranties with this. So it's like
100,000 mile warranties with these new batteries.
They're really stepping up and spending lots of money to make sure all their Bolt customers are happy with what happened. And I got to put hats off to GM for doing what they did. Mind you, I'm not wanting to wait any longer, so I'm getting the F-150. The Rivian I thought was a little high price. But anyway, the Bolt fires, if you also look at the stats on an ICE vehicle, we came up with that term earlier. ICE vehicles spontaneously combust a heck of a lot more than any EV.
Absolutely.
Of any style. ICE vehicles burn up. It happens more than EVs. And it's been bad publicity because every time an oil company hears about an electric car fire, they want to put it all over the news. But the fact is, it's just not that bad. You got a better chance of not burning up. I have an ICE vehicle and a Chevy Bolt in my garage, and I have more worries about my ICE vehicle burning down than my Bolt, and that's a fact, because over 2 million half-ton trucks were recalled between 2018 and 2020 because of spontaneous fires. Now, there's a difference. When you have a problem with an electric vehicle, it's very expensive to fix that battery problem. Where you're talking about 12-volt battery problem, they can fix theirs way cheap. So you don't get the news media on it but be honest with you, they're great cars, and they had some bad PR. Public relations has a lot to do with the car industry. If they get bad PR and people get a bad image, they're not going to sell. So I don't think anything they've done so far is going to continue. They're going to still go brand new with a new outlook. When they put their foot out the door again for the EV, for the Silverado, and for all the EVs they got coming out, it'll be a good foot forward, I'm telling you, because what they've done already was great. It's just bad PR.
So, in short, today we've covered electric vehicle classifications. We discussed active and passive cooling. We discussed charging and charging standards. We talked about cool features like the frunk and the regenerative braking. If you like this content and you're ready to